has i24NEWS by becoming the first Israel-based media outlet to partner with Emirati counterparts, including Dubai Media and Abu Dhabi Media, and also to now open a bureau in the UAE. And now on the anniversary of the Quads, we can announce in this studio an exciting new initiative between i24NEWS and the UAE-Israel Business Council in the form of a media partnership agreement. And still with us in studio is Flor Hassan Nahum, co-founder of the UAE-Israel Business Council. And joining us is i24NEWS CEO Frank Melloul. And Frank, let's start with you. How did i24NEWS come to decide on this media partnership with the UAE and Israel Business Council?
Good evening, Caleb. Thank you for hosting me. But first, I would like to say I'm very proud to celebrate tonight in our studio in i24NEWS the 1 year celebration of the Abraham Accords. You spoke about all the agreement we signed this year, showing that behind the Abraham Accords there is something. It's not only a signature on paper. And i24NEWS decided strategically not to stay as a media to monitor what's going on in the region, but to become an actor and to be part of this new history, to be part of this new Middle East which is happening in the region. And this is the reason why we sign with many media partners like Dubai Media, Abu Dhabi Media and others, because they recognize on i24NEWS the real platform to understand what is behind the Abraham Accord and what will be after the Abraham Accord. And to sign with Fleur this afternoon and with Abdullah Bakr, who I met a few months ago in Dubai, and I was very happy when I spoke with them to see that we are sharing exactly the same values. We want to connect people to people. We want to show that there is a new dynamic in the region, and this is our responsibility in i24NEWS to be part of what's happening there and to be a partner of the UAE-Israel Business Council. It's connecting us directly with this new reality.
Right. Now, you mentioned Abdullah Bakr, the president of the UAE Business Council. He's joining us from our studio in Dubai. Before I want to start with you, journalists are always looking for a great story. And the relationship that's developed between Israel and the Emiratis on the business level and the economic level, but even more so maybe just on the human level, is truly a great story that needs to be told. So talk about how joining with i24NEWS is going to make it possible to get that story told.
Well, I think it's a story that's been told the whole year. And it's been told by i24 as well as many other outlets. But what's different about i24 is that they've actually put their money where their mouth is and opened up. It's the first Israeli communications channel, the first Israeli press to open up in Dubai. So they now have a local presence, and this is something very, very significant. It's significant because they've changed the discourse in what people talk about. A lot of people in the Gulf watch i24. It is balanced media, as we know, and in the last war, probably one of the only balanced media outlets that we had in the Gulf. And so we're very, very pleased. We have a range of incredible partnerships and sponsors, and we're very, very lucky that we were able to sit down and understand how much we can help each other and how much this can be a very fruitful relationship with our business connections that we have on the ground there, and of course a platform for us to keep telling our story.
Right. And Abdullah, the UAE and especially Dubai has really set itself up in recent years as a media center, certainly of the region, I'd even say as a global media center now. So talk about, from your perspective there, about where you see the potential of this partnership we're developing between i24NEWS and the UAE-Israel Business Council.
Well, first, thank you very much for hosting me on this historic day, and I would like to congratulate the i24 channel to have set up their offices in Dubai, and I'm lucky today to be one of the first to visit their offices, beautiful offices around the media city, surrounded with all these big channels that they transfer the news around the world. And as Frank, my friend Frank, said earlier, that we don't want to just be part of the news that goes out. We want to be the news makers, and not necessarily political, but even in the business sector, religious sector, and educate people about the culture. It's very important today to understand what's the culture, how this culture is going to live together, work together. The relationship between UAE and Israel is new, but we were very surprised how it developed within 1 year since the Abraham Accord was signed, and how the growth behind this. And of course, we would like to thank I24 because they had a very big role to educate people about what's going on in the region.
Right. I want to just bring up some figures that we have here. In the year since the signing of the Abraham Accords, the scope of trade between Israel and countries in the Middle East and North Africa have grown significantly, 234% in the first 7 months of 2021 compared to the same year in 2020. Now, breaking that down, we could see that trade with the UAE grew the most, from 50 million to 613 million. Bahrain went from nearly non-existent to about 300,000, and Morocco, of course, which has joined the Abraham Accords, from 14.9 million to 20.8. Which is remarkable. And trade with the allies, Jordan, Egypt, also grew. Frank, you've often said that the part of the DNA of i24 News is as big as the political and diplomatic and security stories are. That's only part of the story with Israel and with the Middle East as well. And certainly here we can see a way to present to people that within midst of the conflict and the differences, there are also other stories, a fuller picture about the region, about the new Middle East that has to be told.
You're right. And I remember when Patrick Drahi decided to launch this channel, he told me, one day there will be peace, and I want this channel to be part of it. And this is the reality today. Because we didn't wait for the Abraham Accords to connect with the Arabic world, especially you, Kalev. You are hosting a lot of people in your show. Every night you are connecting Palestinian, Israelis, people from Saudi Arabia, from Dubai, from Abu Dhabi, from Bahrain. That means we have this DNA since the launch of i24 News. And it's natural now with the Abraham Accords that this region is recognizing i24 News as the platform not only to have news, like my friend Abdullah said a few minutes ago, but also to understand this reality, to understand the culture, to understand the education, what we can connect together, and to see another reality in the region. The new Middle East that you talked about a few seconds ago is showing now that we will have more things gathering the people of the region than dividing the people of the region.
Right. And Flora, you're the Israel-UAE Business Council, but it's beyond really the UAE, isn't it? Because the UAE and Dubai is really a gateway to the entire region. And we're going to see that, for example, with the Dubai Expo that's set to open next month, which is going to not just the region, but the world, including many, many countries that Israel doesn't have official relations with.
Absolutely. That's why the relationship with the UAE is so critical, because the UAE is really a gateway to not just the rest of the Arab world, but it's also a gateway to the whole east part of the globe. You know, Israel has always been very west-facing because of our diaspora, and now things are changing. You know, David Friedman once said our time, working time clock is going to change from Western hours to Eastern hours, and we see that every day. So there is such an incredible change in dynamic, and we're very excited to be on this ride with some incredible partners, i24 being one of them. It's the only channel connecting Israel and the UAE in that way, receiving that coverage, doing it in many different languages. And this is really exciting because we are every day changing the shape of our region, and media is an important part of that.
Well, let's talk about media, but also on the human level. Again, I've said this before this evening, but I have to stress it again, just how surprised Israelis have been about the openness of Emiratis to forge these partnerships, and how quickly they've moved in making that, and that also in the field of media, which is a sensitive sort of area. To talk about that, the potential that there is from the perspective of the UAE.
Yes, I mean, as you said, the UAE has been always opening their doors, our doors to the rest of the world, to come and talk about any kind of subject, being free with their thoughts, with their religious, and practice everything that they want. And I think when I met my friend Frank in Dubai the first time, we mentioned a very important point over here, that the message of Expo is connecting minds. And that's where we always try to focus is connect people with their minds. People will have the arguments, will have disagreements, but that's not a problem. That's where we start. I mean, we were surprised with the relationship with Israel. It's a new relationship. We didn't know how this relationship is going to be shaped. Of course, at the Business Council, we started, it was a fruit of the Abraham Accord, and we started setting up those platforms for people to come and get to understand each other. And it was very flexible because both sides, we were open for all ideas and how we can build the future together and make this history together.
Right. Flora, as a journalist, of course, we want to know, where are the areas that you really see exciting? We see some exciting developments already starting. Where are the real potential? What should we be looking for in specifically in that fields of economic cooperation coming between Israel and the UAE?
Well, I think the very exciting news in the last week, of course, is that Mubadala, which is one of the largest corporations in the UAE, has just bought a stake in Delek gas fields. That's huge, $1 billion. I mean, we're talking about $1 billion of trade by the end of this year. This is in a corona economy. And in one deal, we have $1 billion from Mubadala into Delek. So this is just one of the very exciting deals that are cooking. We don't know what's going to happen, of course, with the joint pipeline. We'll have to see about that. But I envision big, life-changing, I said game-changing deals like the Mubadala one with Delek.
Frank, I'm going to leave the last word to you. I'm going to ask you a question. When are we going to see an i24NEWS bureau in Riyadh, in Kuwait City, in Oman, and some of these other countries that we're looking forward to?
So I can announce tonight that I will be at the opening of the Expo, and I will use this opportunity to travel in the region because I have already a lot of contact with some countries who want to continue to develop ties with i24NEWS and partnership like with our friends today. And I can announce you also that you spoke about Morocco. Here is not only the Gulf.
That's right. We've barely touched on that in this program.
I'm very proud to tell you that we have already part of our team some Moroccan people working for i24NEWS.
Well, our new motto, of course, is about the beating heart of this is where the beating heart of the new Middle East is, and certainly we see in this kind of partnership something which we, a little more than a year ago, it would be unimaginable to be discussing a partnership. Of course, Israel and UAE Business Council, and of course i24NEWS partnering with Dubai Media and Abu Dhabi Media. Frank Melloul, Flora Hassan, Nahum, and Abdullah Bakhir, thank you for joining us on this special broadcast on i24NEWS. And thank you for joining us on this special program. It's 1 year since the signing of the Abraham Accords, year one, but there is certainly plenty more to come. This is just the beginning, it appears, as I said, of a new Middle East. Thank you for joining us.